Hello and welcome to Bags of Action. This is a 5-minute review of Terminator Dark Fate, starring Linda Hamilton, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Mackenzie Davis, Natalie Reyes and Gabriel Luna. I'm going to do the first part of this without spoilers, then I'm going to give a score, and then I'm going to do a bit more after with some spoilers. This may end up running longer than 5 minutes because there's quite a lot to talk about. I've only just come out of seeing this film, so I wanted to get it down as soon as I could. The film is directed by Tim Miller, from the Deadpool fame most recently, and he certainly is someone that knows how to do action well. We know that James Cameron has been involved in this film too, and it certainly shows. The pace is quite frenetic. Almost within a couple of minutes of the film, something's happening, there's some action scenes, and it doesn't really relent, but there are moments for character development along the way, and a couple of quiet moments, so it's not constantly on the go like Crank, which doesn't really stop for anything. I was really pleased when I saw that Linda Hamilton was coming back, and obviously Arnie was appearing in this one again. Even more interesting for me was the fact that Arnie was playing someone his own age, although how that was going to work in this film, I was very keen to find out. So, what is the film actually about? Without spoiling it, what I can say is that the structure of the film is something that we've seen before. A Terminator is sent back to kill someone important. A human from the Resistance is also sent back to protect that person and kill the Terminator. So far, so the same. We've seen this in Terminators 1 and 2, so there's nothing fresh there. They've upgraded the Terminator, they've upgraded the human person who's come back because she's enhanced, but this time the person who's being targeted is a young woman called Dani. We don't really know why that she's important, but she's obviously an important figure in the human resistance for the machines to want her dead. So the film feels quite familiar in some ways, which is both a blessing and a curse. If you've never seen a Terminator film before, you're only vaguely familiar with it, you can watch this and it'll feel fresh. Whereas if you've come to the franchise after 5 films, it's kind of samey. If this was a film that was intended to reinvigorate the franchise and launch it off into new areas so they can do multiple sequels, I don't think it's going to do that, because it doesn't bring anything particularly new to the table. There were some touching character moments in the film where Linda Hamilton and Arnie got to do something a little bit more interesting, and despite now being in his 70s, Arnie can still really bring it. There are a couple of moments where he's absolutely terrifying and he's able to bring back the persona of that original Terminator, and you believe that he isn't human at all. However, they attempted to inject humour into this film and it doesn't really work. It was quite awkward, it stood out like a sore thumb, and while I did hear other people laughing around me, I felt it was injected to try and bring some levity to the film when it didn't really need it. Some of the jokes were mildly amusing, but they felt particularly forced as a standalone action movie, and if this had been the original Terminator film and the others didn't exist, then that would have been fine. But they're saying that this is the sequel to Terminator 2, and they've ignored all of the others, hence bringing back Linda and Arnie. And that's where some of the problems occur, because in order to create new mythology, instead of building on the old, they've essentially torn it down and thrown it all away. And the way in which they do that is what has upset many fans, myself included. It feels more like they're paying lip service to what went before, instead of using it as a foundation to tell a new story. I'm now reaching the point where I'm struggling to talk about the film without giving any spoilers away. So I'm going to give it a score now and say, as an action movie, it's quite enjoyable. The pace is exciting. There's some good character moments. It's great to see some old faces come back. The new Terminator is terrifying and interesting. Gabriel Luna does a really good job in the role as being this inhuman killing machine. And so for all of those reasons, I'm going to give it a solid 3 out of 5. Not as good as the first 2 Terminator films, but better than some of the sequels that came after it. Okay, now we're going to go into spoiler territory. If you've not seen Terminator Dark Fate or you don't want any spoilers, then switch this off now. Okay, so there's a moment in the film where Sarah Connor says to some of the other characters, "We saved the world, we destroyed Skynet, we killed the last Terminator, and we saved 3 billion lives. So in theory, there are no more Terminators and the world is safe. However, there are other Terminators, so it means that something else was created, someone else looked into it, which echoes things that we saw in Terminator 2. Cyberdyne Systems found the technology in the metal press from the first one and were reverse engineering it. In this, something else has happened. Someone else started developing defense technology, which then led to this new thing called Legion, which eventually fought back against the human creators, and so on. Here's where the problem occurs. In the first 3 minutes or 5 minutes of the film, a Terminator, played by a younger CGI'd Arnold Schwarzenegger, kills Edward Furlong, John Connor, when he's a teenager, shortly after Terminator 2. So they've done some good CGI on Linda Hamilton too to make her look as she did. Then for the next 20 odd years, Sarah Connor goes around hunting and killing Terminators that are being sent back for some reason. On the surface of it, that's fine. A new hero would potentially rise in the future to lead the human resistance, except that no one knows who Sarah Connor is. Nobody has any clue who John Connor is. So you've just essentially wiped away those first two films. The events of those two films no longer matter, and the characters and everything they went through, all of those struggles mean nothing. And the other problem is the new character is referred to at one point as the new John. So you've just swapped one for the other, and it's exactly the same thing again, which is just boring. We've seen this time and time again now. Another aspect of the film that bothers me, and I wish they'd actually spent the film exploring this instead, is that the Terminator that killed a young John Connor has spent the intervening years pretending to be a human, and over that period of 20 plus years has in essence grown a conscience, and he is the one who's been helping Sarah Connor behind the scenes. That as a story is something completely different, set within the Terminator universe. That is something that I'd quite like to see explored. And is it possible? Is it feasible? Could it happen? I'm not sure. The way it's been set up, I don't completely buy it. But it's just kind of part of the larger story, which is something we've seen again. Someone sent back from the future to protect someone and blah, blah, blah. We've done this over and over again. There are some other problems I had with the film, but I won't get into them because it's going to give away too much. But from the looks of it, the film is having some problems at the box office and is not the smash hit that they were hoping it was going to be. So my gut tells me it'll fall short of their target. But this won't be the end of the Terminator franchise. In another 3, 4, 5, 7 years, someone will come up with another idea and they'll tend to reboot it and do something similar again, just as they did a few years ago with Terminator Genisys. But unless they can stop doing this same story over and over again, it isn't going to be the relaunch that they were hoping to spin out and create their own version of the Marvel or Star Wars universe. Part of it could just be franchise fatigue. Part of it could be that this is a story that's just too familiar for the existing fans and not different enough for the new fans to really capture their interest. So it'll be interesting to see how this develops in the next few years and if there's any talk of a sequel or extending the franchise. So have you seen Terminator Dark Fate? If so, get in touch in the usual ways and let us know. And don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel.